Welcome back. Today we're discussing townhouse condos versus apartment condos. We're going to talk about the differences between the two. We're going to talk about what a condo is versus a freehold property is. We're going to talk about which one's right for you and which one you typically get a better deal on. But before we get into it, do me that favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and please hit that like button so more people like you can see this video. And don't forget about a race to 25,000 subscribers where one lucky subscriber is going to win $5,000 to put towards their TFSA, their RESP, their RSP, to pay down their mortgage, to pay down other debt, or to simply do whatever they like with. But in order to win, you have to be subscribed. And I appreciate each and every one of you, the 15,000 of you who have already subscribed. 50% of the people who watch my videos aren't already subscribed. And my question is, if you can win $5,000 and all you have to do is subscribe, what's stopping you? So go ahead, click that subscribe button. It's free, it's easy, and it's definitely worth it. The definitive guide on how to manage your credit, product, penalty, price in that order. It's never been more important to get your mortgage right. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's discuss townhouse condos versus apartment condos, because this is one of those things that is becoming more and more popular. In fact, I think this is quickly becoming the fastest growing piece of the Canadian real estate market, quite frankly, because single family homes in some markets have become extraordinarily expensive. So that leads to a whole bunch of questions about townhouse condos versus apartment condos, and which is better. And in order to go through and really talk about the differences, we need to start by answering the question, what is the difference between freehold and condo? And these are the two primary ways that there are to purchase properties in Canada. The third one, which we won't discuss in detail here, is leasehold properties, which basically means you're leasing on a long-term lease from somebody in order to own the rights to build a property or live in a property that is on that property. We're not going to discuss that in great detail today, but we do need to discuss freehold versus condo, because that makes a huge difference when it comes to your purchase decisions on a townhouse or an apartment condominium. And basically the differences are pretty simple. With a freehold property, you own the land and everything that you build on it. So let's say you buy a piece of land, you build a house, or you buy an existing house that's on a piece of land that is freehold. It means that you own pretty much everything there, and you can pretty much do what you want with that property. You can paint the outside of the property, you can repave the driveway, you can garden and landscape as you please, and for the most part, with the exception of some local bylaws, you can pretty much make all of the decisions with respect to your property autonomously. Now you're also going to pay your water, you're going to pay your taxes, you're going to pay your electricity, you're going to pay your gas. Everything is pretty much on you. Now, contrast that to a condo, which is typically a piece of land that is owned by a condo corporation. And it can have houses built on it, it can have row houses built on it, and it can have apartment buildings built on it. And those condominium corporations basically own that piece of land, and you, as the owner of a unit in that condo corporation, have the voting rights and an ownership stake in the condo corporation. So in other words, all of the condo owners in a community get together and basically, by majority rules, make decisions on what can happen and what can't happen on the piece of land that that condo corporation owns. Now, typically there is a board of directors that is elected by the condo owners that helps make decisions and helps guide the condo corporation through their decision-making processes. Typically, those are voted on at least once a year, so the condo board changes on a yearly basis. If you're going to buy a condo, I highly recommend that you get involved in your condo board, but for the most part, that is how it works. Now, when it comes to townhouses versus apartments, townhouses can be either freehold or they can be condos. And there's a big difference there and a big distinction there, because if you own a freehold townhouse, it typically means you bought a piece of row housing where you own the front yard, the backyard, the land, and the building that is attached to two other buildings. Now, there's some things that can be problematic with owning a home that's attached to two other buildings that isn't condominiumized. But for the most part, that when you're buying a freehold townhouse is what you are getting. You're getting the rights to the entire property to pretty much the middle of the walls that from the units that are attached to you. Now, townhouses also more frequently are condominiumized. And what that means is that a large parcel of land is purchased by a developer, they build row housing, and then they operate from a condominium corporation standpoint. And that typically means that you have less responsibilities than you would if you had a freehold townhouse. And the reason why is because the condo corporation will be responsible for things like doing the outside maintenance. They'll be responsible for things like maintaining the building, which also means you don't have a say in what color your building is and what color that your unit is and everything else on the outside. Internally, of course, you have that control. But with a freehold townhouse, you would have rights to paint your building at whatever color you want it to be and do landscaping as you see fit on the outside, as long as you aren't encroaching on your neighbor's property. So big difference there between a freehold and a condominiumized townhouse. Now, other benefits to a condominiumized townhouse is they typically have a management company, which means it makes dealing with neighbors and it makes dealing with issues with the property significantly easier. And they also have what's called an operating budget and a reserve fund, which means things like the outside maintenance are taken care of. And there's also planning that's done just in case down the road renovations or things need to be fixed. And of course, you pay a monthly condo fee for that privilege, but it makes planning for the future significantly easier. So the key thing to understand is that when you're buying a townhouse, you have to know whether you're buying a condo or a freehold townhouse. Your realtor can help you with that, and know the differences. Know that you have a lot more responsibilities with a freehold townhouse, but you also have a lot more expenses with a townhouse condo because you're going to have that condo fee that has that contribution to management fees, the operating budget, and the reserve fund. Now, in contrast to that, apartment condos are almost always condominiumized. Very rarely do you ever find an apartment building that is freehold because, quite frankly, when you're building on top of each other, it's really hard to have freehold condos. Now, that's not to say that you can't have freehold townhouses that are stacked on top of each other, but typically those are very rare. And with certainty, anything that is above 2 stories is almost always an apartment condo. Now, when you start living in an apartment condo, there are some other things that come along with it. First and foremost, you typically only own what's called paint to paint. So the paint to paint on the walls inside your unit. So if you want to make any changes to electrical, plumbing, heating, anything that is outside the paint of your property, then you have to have board approval in order to do so. You also have things like what's called common property. Now, this is true for townhouse condos as well. There's common property in townhouse condos, but common property is things like the hallways, the elevators, any amenities like a pool or a barbecue area or an outdoor patio area. Those are all typically common areas. And the common areas are controlled entirely by the condominium corporation. Now, typically with apartment condos, they're closer to amenities. A lot of the times, we're talking about high rises in downtown, or we're talking about condominiums that are located close to shopping centers. And that is what makes them the most desirable, is their proximity to things like grocery stores, restaurants, coffee shops, nightlife, and the like. So typically an apartment style borrower is somebody who wants to be very close to the action. Now, as far as which one is better, whether you're buying a townhouse condo or an apartment condo, it's typically because you aren't quite ready to step up to that single family type living. You want to be closer to the action, or maybe you want to buy something that's a little bit less expensive than a single family home, and that's totally cool. The reality of it is it comes down to your personal preferences, because if you have something like a large dog, it's typically going to be pretty hard to get them approved at a condominium apartment. But a condominium townhouse is typically pretty easy to get a large dog approved for, because they aren't as stringent about their large dog bylaws, because on a townhouse, you aren't going to have to see a dog in the hallway or on the elevator and be worried about whether or not it's going to attack you, and so on and so forth. Although 99% of dogs are pretty good dogs and aren't going to attack you, but that's a concern typically for a condo owner. As far as the lifestyle choice goes, that's completely up to you. Now, townhouse condos are typically bigger than apartment condos. They're typically 2 stories, so they have larger spaces, which means they're more expensive. They're typically approaching prices that are closer to single family homes, so you have to weigh that in. On the contrary to that, you can get some really high-end apartment condos, but there are some pretty good deals when it comes to getting an apartment. And you can buy something that, if you are a single individual who only needs 1 bedroom and a small place, you don't need this really large place that's going to be hard to clean, that has way more space than you need, well, an apartment condo may be right for you. But really what it comes down to is personal preference, where you're at in your life and what you want to purchase. And that ultimately should be the deciding factor when you're choosing between a townhouse and an apartment condo. Now, I personally have never lived in a townhouse condo because I always either wanted to be in a condo downtown, an apartment condo downtown, or I wanted to be in a single family home. I totally skipped the townhouse condo because that just wasn't something that was in line with my lifestyle at any point in my life. But that's a decision that you have to make for yourself. Now, when it comes to which one is a better deal, typically you can get into the real estate market for a lot cheaper in a condominium apartment. But you can also get some pretty good deals on townhouse condos. Now, one thing that we're noticing in markets across the country, especially in places like Calgary and Toronto and Vancouver, is the condo markets compared to the other markets either aren't growing as fast or they are depressed. So especially like, for example, in the Calgary market right now, if you've owned a condo in the last 5 years, you've probably lost some money on it because there's so many new ones going up and therefore the prices are going down. So you have to keep that in mind when you're buying an apartment condo, is that if they're building lots of them, there's a little bit of risk associated with that. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't going to be weakness in the townhouse market somewhere down the road. But for the most part, what we've seen across the country is that townhouses have typically performed better. Now, that being said, if you're going to buy a condo apartment with the intention of renting it out, they can be one of the best investments you'll ever make, especially if you buy a property that is going to be easily rented to young professionals. And that, in my mind, is one of the best investments out there, particularly because you can have a condo manager who's going to take care of managing the condo, and all you have to worry about is basically some appliances and the paint to paint. And if your tenants are a pain in the butt, usually the condo corporation will take care of them for you, so you don't have to worry about evicting them and doing the like. So there's definitely benefits, and ultimately what it comes down to is it comes down to what is right for you. And what that means is consulting with a realtor, consulting with your mortgage people, and making sure that you're making the best long-term decision for yourself. And keep in mind, any decision with respect to real estate can't be made as if it is a short-term decision. You've got to be thinking 5 to 10 year horizon and use the 5 year to 10 year horizon in order to help you decide between whether you want to purchase something like a condo, a townhouse, or you want to go directly into a single family home. Now, if you're getting into the market for a townhouse or for an apartment condo, we've put together a course called Homebuyer Bootcamp that goes through a whole bunch of stuff with respect to apartments versus townhouses and all the other real estate things that you're going to need to deal with. We've priced that course really, really low. And the reason why is, quite frankly, because it is my why, my personal why, to inspire people to thrive and give back. This is part of my way of giving back, is creating a really inexpensive course for people so that they don't make big $5, $10, $15, $20,000 mistakes by doing things like making a short-term buying decision on an apartment condo when it wasn't necessarily the right decision for them. So if you are getting into the market, I'll put a link in the description below to that Home Buyers Bootcamp. There'll also be a link in the description below to our Secrets to Getting the Lowest Rate course. Sincerely hope you will allow us to join you and help you through this process, especially if you're getting a mortgage. We would love to help you on that end as well. And if you found this video useful, do me that favor, as I mentioned in the beginning, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, please hit that like button so more people like you can see this video. Maybe leave me a comment as well. That would be cool. Let me know what you thought and whether you are a condo or a townhouse buyer. And don't forget about that race to 25,000 subscribers. I sincerely hope you, yes you, because you made it to the end, I hope you will be the winner. Cheers.